I want to dedicate tonight's shir to the Yidden Eretz Yisrael who have a daily struggle against our adversaries. In this week's Parsha, it talks about the Eibusha says he will send his angel in front of the Jewish people and he will vanquish the 6 nations, the 7 nations. So we're learning a Rashi about this, so the Eibusha should help. That they should live in peace and tranquility ad bias Mashiach ad vad b'chlal. V'yidaber Hashem al Moshe leich alei mizeh ata v'om asher eleisa meretz Mitzrayim el oretz Hashem nishbate l'Avram litzach Yaakov leim al zarach atnenu. This is the beginning of Perek Lamed Gimel. So the Eibusha says, go up and inherit the land. V'shalachti lefanecha maloch v'geirashti es haknaini ha'emoidi v'hachiti v'haprizi v'hachivi v'hayevusi. Again, this is Perek Lamed Gimel Pasuk 1 and 2. 33 Pasuk 1 and 2. I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Knani, the Amoidi, the Chiti, and the Prizi, the Chivi, and the Yevusi. Okay. Look at the Rashi. V'geirashti baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shakim dvarei. Amen. The Rashi says, V'geirashti es haknani. I will drive out the Canaanites. Vav umesheim. There are only 6 nations mentioned here. Wait a minute. There's supposed to be 7. So how come the Eibishter mentions only 6? So the answer is Hagirgoshi. This is because the Girgoshi he left on his own. Omad uponim b'pnei me'ela. Got up and cleared out on their own before the Eden. So in other words, they heard terror struck their heart. The Moigu kol yoshvei oretz. They heard that the Jews are coming. Then Yeshua sent 3 letters before they came into Eretz Yisrael, telling them that they're coming. Whoever wants to run can run, and they decided they're going to run. It's a Gemara in the Yerushalmi. The Tosas bring this in Gittin that they ran to Africa. There's a nation, Girgosh in Africa, and it's Negei La'alochas. We'll talk about this soon. Okay, so therefore the Torah, the Rabban Shalom knew that that's going to happen. So he didn't mention the name of Girgoshi because there's no issue with Girgoshi. They're going to run away anyhow. There's no point mentioning Girgoshi. Later in Dvarim, the Torah mentions Girgoshi because the bottom line is when it's Eretz Shiva Umas, we got the land of 7 nations. But the fact is there will not be a need for an angel to drive out the Girgoshi. Girgoshi is going to leave on his own. Good question, answer, simple Rashi. What could be wrong with this Rashi? Nothing's wrong. Problem is that Rashi did cut and paste on this Rashi in the same Parsha. You'd say maybe, if it's some upshat that he said in Bereshis, and maybe the student forgot it by the time you got to Chumash Devarim, so he did cut and paste. Okay. But in the same Parsha, where this is in chapter 33, Pasuk 1 and 2, in next chapter 34, Pasuk 11 and 12, cut and paste. The Rashi says the same question, the same answer. Let's read further inside. In the pasuk it says, "Shamar l'cha eisa asher anochi metzavcha hayom hineni gorish u'panachas hamoidi v'aknani v'achivi v'aprizi v'achivi v'ayevusi." I will drive out before you these nations. And look in the Rashi in the first column in the last 4 lines. Pasuk again 34, pasuk 11. As Moiri Rashi says, Vavumasi Ishkan. There are 6 nations enumerated here. He Hagirgoshi Amad, because the Girgoshi arose upon him and he cleared out before them. Oh, it wasn't just cut and paste. Rashi changed a few words. In Rashi's computer there wasn't a cut and paste. So Rashi already retyped it, so he added and subtracted a few words here and there. Obviously, that's not true. So the question is, why did Rashi ask the question and give the same answer twice in the same parsha? And why is there a few differences in the words between? Obviously, the differences in the words between the first Rashi and the second Rashi is the key understanding that really they're different. Rashi is saying something different.
Also in the Pasuk, they say that Knani Emori, and Yidalach is Emori with Knani.
Good kasha. So, before we look at the several details, you see they are different. In the first Rashi, it says, Rashi quotes the word Vegeirashti. And the second time, he doesn't quote the word Vegeirashti. Number 2, in the first Rashi, he says, Vav umis heim, there are 6 nations. Vav umis heim, there are 6 nations. Second Rashi, which is Vav umis yeshkan, 6 nations there are here. Third difference is that Rashi says, in the first Rashi, he just says, Viha girgoshi amad upon it, and the girgoshi. Second Rashi says, Ki ha girgoshi, because the girgoshi. And the fourth difference is in the first Rashi says, Amad upon him ipnei me'elav, it was on his own, and the second Rashi doesn't add the word me'elav. So these are 4 minor differences, but obviously the answer is in the details. The angel of the answer is in the details. Okay. Before we continue, one major question really is that this is not the first time that the Torah does this thing, that it talks about the 7 nations and only mentions the name of 6 nations. It did that twice already in Parshos Mishpatim, once in Parshos Mishpatim and twice in Shmois and Va'eda. The Torah already did it a few times, and Rashi doesn't ask any questions there. So you have to look at every time the context of what the Torah is talking about. When the Yidden are suffering in Mitzrayim, so in Parshas Shmois and Va'eda, the Eibush says to Moshe Rabbeinu, I want you to deliver my people out of Egypt, right? So he talks to Moshe Rabbeinu. He tells them about the beautiful land, that he wants to bring them to a beautiful land. He wants to bring them to a beautiful land. He says, I want Allah eschamon Mitzrayim, and let its toivu rechava, let its zavas cholov advash, al makam aknani, ve'achiti, ve'amoiri, ve'prizi, ve'chiv, ve'vusi. That's once. And then later in the conversation, Allah eschamon Mitzrayim, and let its knani, and let its zavas cholov advash. It's a land that's dripping of milk and honey. And the Eibush says, the land of the 7 nations, but he only mentions the name of 6. So if you look at the context, he's talking about a land that's dripping of milk and honey. Could be Girgoshi's land was not the top quality land. Could be Girgoshi's land was, not so special. This land of Knani was more special. And maybe that's in the order also in the Pasuk, because that was, the order is how special and how good their land is. So therefore Rashi doesn't ask the question there. Rashi asks the question here. Here the Torah says, I will chase away. I will chase away. That's what the Pasuk says. I will send an angel. All the adversaries of the Jews will be driven out of Israel. So why do we mention 6 nations? Why the Gogoshi are the good friends? What? They're the Hamas, they're the Hezbollah. Which friends are they? The ISIS? They're the Al-Qaeda. Who? They are good friends. Gogoshi was one of the 7 nations. He obligated it to kill them. So why is it that if you're talking about the land, okay, so maybe their land is not so special. It's not the most. It's not dripping with so much milk and honey. But if you're talking about now driving out the enemy of the Jewish people, why mention the name of 6th nation and ignore the 7th nation, Girgoshi? Therefore, Rashi's bothered. Here, all of a sudden, Rashi has to ask a question. And Rashi answers that there'll be no need for an angel to drive them out. They're going to hear about the victory of the Jewish people, and they're going to go by themselves. Okay. Now we come one Pedic later. It's a different story. We're not talking about the land, and we're not talking about the people. We're talking about a third story. The Eibishter says, I'm going to bring you to the land. The Eibishter gives an introduction. I'm going to send an angel, and it's going to be spectacular. I'm going to drive out 7 nations. But this is all an introduction. The point is this. The Eibishter says, let's read it inside. It's in the first column and the second column. The first column, it's the last 4 lines. Pasuk Yud Aleph in the Pasuk. Shamar L'cha, be preserve what I command you today. Hineni goyrish mipanecha, I will drive out before you as Samoidi v'Aknani v'Achiti v'Prizi v'Chivi. All these nations I will drive out. Again, he forgets to mention, the Torah fails to mention Girgashi, right? But what's the point here?
Maybe when he said Goresh, it's Girgash.
Yeah, that's cute.
No.
That's good. Yishamar lecha. Here's where the point is. Yishamar lecha. Be careful. Not to make a covenant with the people that live in the land. Asher tabah, which you are coming there. It'll be a trap in your midst. Rather, you must shatter their altars, break down their monuments, and cut down their ashedas, the asheda trees. Take care not to make a covenant to the people who live in the land. Because if you will do, and go stray after their gods, and then you will sacrifice and he will call you, and you eat the sacrifice, and then it will go downhill, and then there'll be bad stuff for the Jewish people.
Or just for that time?
For these people, it's Ladoros. You can never make a bris with them. So, what happens?
Is this the height of Avodah Zarah?
This is the worst. This is a lav. That this is the worst thing to make a covenant with these people. The worst thing you can do.
What about with other people like Aaron?
Oh, that's another question.
Why is it twice Pentichot Berit? Pasuk after Pasuk. You don't understand from the first Pasuk?
Because the next pasuk tells you what's going to happen if you're going to make a bris. That first you think you're going to be, and then what's going to happen? You're going to become friends with them, and then you're going to start going after their gods, and then you're going to eat their food, and then you're going to marry their daughters, and then they're going to take you away from the Eibishter.
Is that obvious?
That's a good question. Some in Shutei Shamikra, it's not the biggest question because sometimes the Eibishter explains the reason of his mitzvah, sometimes he doesn't. Obviously, in the deeper level, in Pnimiyas HaTorah and Drush and Gemara, there will always be this question as a very valid question. But Rashi doesn't bother, because you see Rashi doesn't ask your question, doesn't answer your question, because Rashi is not bothered by sometimes the Torah explains the reason for the mitzvah, sometimes the Torah doesn't. But what is clear here is that the point of this is only an introduction. The Eibusha says, I'm going to chase away the Moedi, the Knani Echiti, but the point here is not to make a covenant with them. So now what's bothering Rashi is a separate question. Say they're going to run away on their own. But who cares? What if they come back to the land? Am I allowed to make a covenant with them, or am I not allowed to make a covenant with them? So how come the Torah, when the Torah tells you which nations it is forbidden to make a covenant with? So why does the Torah say the name of 6 nations and fails to mention the 7th nation? Rashi answers, Vav umas yeshkan. It's a technical issue. There is only 6 nations here. God can't tell you not to make a covenant with a nation that's not here. The Torah says, Pentichres brishli yoyshev haaretz. You're going to make a covenant to the people that's sitting in the land. They're not going to be sitting in the land when you go into the land. It's only a technical reason that the Eibishter is not mentioning the name of Girgashi. And that's why Rashi says, because Kia Girgashi Ama here. Kia Girgashi, because the Girgashi arose upon him and went away from them. Rashi doesn't say Me'elav from their own, but it's not relevant how they went or why they went. It's a different issue in this Rashi. In this Rashi, the question is, if the Eibusha says not to make a covenant with the 7 nations, why didn't you mention the name of all 7? Why mention the name only of 6? Rashi answers, you're not allowed to make a covenant with any one of the 7 nations. There's a technical reason of why the 7th nation is not mentioned. Key, that's what Rashi says, key. In this Rashi, not in the previous. Key, because Vav umas yeshkan. It's technical. The 6 nations that are here. The other one's not here, so what are we going to talk about them? They're not here. Obviously, if they come back, you're not allowed to make a covenant then. Based on what Rashi says, would also answer a serious question according to halacha. In halacha, the question would be asked, So the question is, what happens if the people from Africa that the Tosfos brings from the Yerushalmi that the Gergoshi ended up in Africa? How about if the people from Africa, the Gergoshi, come back to Israel? And is it now forbidden to make a covenant with them? So it would depend because the Torah doesn't mention the name of Gergoshi here, but based on what Rashi says, it's only a technical thing. It's a very, very technical issue, a very technical thing. We're saying it's technical. There's only 6 people here, 6 nations here, so we talk about 6. But really, you can't make a covenant with any one of them.
He's talking about the Ethiopian?
We don't know who
So why was they
Gergoshi is.
left out? Why was the 7th one left out?
Because he wasn't there. So technically, we can't talk about him. But if he comes back, he's part of the
He's
deal.
part of the
He's
package.
part of the package. The Mordechai Eliyahu, the Chroine Lebrocha, Zecher Tzaddik Lebrocha, was at the time that he was chief rabbi of Israel, came in official capacity to France. I think his wife was from France. She was French. So he came and he was there for several weeks. And he got an invitation by the president, Jacques Chirac. So Jacques Chirac was a very influential political figure then in Europe. Not a great friend of Israel, as you all remember, and but he received an invitation, official invitation by the president. So obviously, it was being handled by the Israeli consulate, the Israeli embassy, and knowing Reb Mordechai Eliyahu, they were a little nervous because he was very, 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 very strong supporter of what the Rebbeinu Shalom says in the Torah about making a covenant with the Goyim, and he was very outspoken about it, about the importance of not making any deals with the Arabs, and that making any deal with the Arabs is dangerous for the Arabs, dangerous for the Jews, and is Rachmana litzlan puach nefesh, endangers people's lives. He was very vocal about it. But the invitation was there, so they, when you come for an official visit, it's like, in Israel or in America, you don't just, they give you a tour. Like in Israel, they give you a tour in the Yad Vashem, right? Right, so they give you an official tour.
Are you connected with the Rabbi at this point?
Very connected, yeah. It was very, very, very influenced about these, yeah. So they showed him around museum, and an official tour. What they would do, they would do for any official, before they coming to the official banquet. So there was one of the things in display. There was a fancy chair, a throne that was a Napoleon. So they said Napoleon.
Napoleon's chair?
Yeah.
Where, Yad Vashem?
No,
Paris.
Paris.
So they said this chair is Napoleon's throne, Napoleon's chair. I said, Napoleon? Who's Napoleon? They like the counts. The Israelis are going a little. They tell him, there was 200 years ago there was a general, and he went around the whole world. He tried to conquer the world. I said, oh, interesting. Was he a sweet fellow? Was he nice? They said, whatever. He was very. He impacted the whole world history. He said, it looks like a nice chair. Can I buy this chair? They started laughing. They said, "No, Rabbi, this is French history. It's not for sale." Okay. They move on in the tour, and there was something. There was a jacket. There was a sword from Louis the 14th. So they say this is the sword of Louis the 14th. He says, Louis the 14th. Who is he? The Israeli officials are not uncomfortable. They tell him, they tell him about Louis. I guess not without the juicy stories. They cut those out, and he says, "Tell me, was he a very honorable, a very kind person?" He said, "Yeah." They said, but so why do you respect him? They said, "Listen, this is French history." Okay. So then he was brought in for the official dinner, and the president, Jacques Chirac, spoke, and then he was invited to speak. Obviously, there's a translator. He didn't speak French. So there was from the Israeli embassy, consulate, someone got up to translate. As soon as he started speaking, he realized his wife told him that the translation is being a little rounded off. So he stopped speaking. He said that look, the rabbis have a certain Talmudic way of oratory, and sometimes it doesn't get translated well. And since the Rabbi Sitruk, the chief rabbi of France, is here, he would like to request the chief rabbi should translate his words. Okay. So he said like this: I just received a spectacular tour of the French history. When I was shown the throne of Napoleon, I asked who Napoleon was, and everyone laughed. Am I so ignorant? The chief rabbi of Israel doesn't know the basics of history, that Napoleon was, almost conquered the entire world, had dominion. And obviously, it was silly for asking such a question. I also asked if I can buy his chair, and that was obviously a silly question. Why would I expect that you wouldn't respect your history? This is part of the fabric of France. You would never sell such a chair. And when they showed me the sword of Louis XIV, I asked, as if I was ignorant, who Louis XIV is, and they laughed. They were right for laughing. How would I not know who the Louis XIV was? And why would they sell his sword? This is part of French history. Even though I'm not a French citizen, you rightfully can expect that I should respect your heritage. So he said. Then he continues. He says, "We live in the land of Israel, and we have a prophet called Moshe Rabbeinu, who took us out of Egypt 3,000 years ago, and he gave us the Torah. And this Torah is known to everyone. Everyone knows about the Bible. And the Bible says countless times that the Jews must inherit the land of Israel. Why should we disrespect? We also expect that you should respect our heritage. Do you know Jerusalem was the capital of Israel 3,000 years ago? That's where King David established his kingdom, and King Solomon. Why should I respect Louis XIV and Napoleon, who lived 200 and 300 years ago, and you shouldn't respect King David and King Solomon, who lived 3,000 years ago in Jerusalem? Why would you expect that we should give away Jerusalem to another group of people?" He got a standing ovation. He got a standing ovation. Jacques Chirac walked over and embraced him. And he asked that there was like a little commotion. The Israelis were really nervous. He asked that he gave him they brought him. They weren't running to the president's office. They came with a special. He gave a special medal of honor to Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu. So you see,
That's a Kiddush Hashem.
that was a Kiddush Hashem.
You're not scared from nobody.
No, Mordechai
He
Eliyahu.
said that
You see, when the Eibusha tells us in the Torah of how we treat people who try to encroach on the land of Eretz Yisrael that belongs to the Jewish people, if we tell it in sweet, not in an arrogant, in a sweet tone, but with strength and with full confidence, even the greatest of adversaries take note and eventually respect us as well. That's what the Torah tells us. In this Parsha, the Torah says, Shomer Lecha, that they never make a covenant to the Yoshev Haaretz. So Rashi is saying, hey, wait a minute, where's Gigoshi? So Rashi says it's a technical issue. Gigoshi is not mentioned because Gigoshi happens to not be here. But if Gigoshi is going to come back, Gigoshi is just as bad as all the other nations. Yeah?
By the way, I don't know if you thought.
If you use that logic, that the technical reason you just wrote that they
Rashi.
picked themselves up and that they weren't actually present. So using that logic, you would say the same, that of course any other nations that would follow in history that are not there now, also we wouldn't accept that.
The spirit of the law. Well, the mitzvahs on these seven nations.
It's a pasuk in Yeshayahu
Yeah.
that says, quote, "Im she'ol asinu Choser. Now, when they made the Oslo clause, it seemed to light that the Targum Yonatan and that Pasuk, all of he was a Choser. Yonatan translates it. Even the Kabbalah, Asiluk Hayamah. That with the terrorists,
We made a pact.
We made a covenant.
What were we saying?
And you know that also it's a fact that after the Oslo Accord, the next election, when they had election results coming from Kfar Chabad, almost everybody voted for Rabbi Kahana.
These are unofficial.
By the way, on the
Yeah.
internet,
Yeah.
apparently there was a report that the Egyptian archaeologists found an army of Egyptians underwater, fully equipped army that looks like they drowned on dry land, with chariots, with armaments, with weapons, and they said it numbered at least 5,000. So
Oh wow, spectacular.
it was just announced.
Where they find it, where exactly?
What?
Yam Suf, the Red Sea?
Yeah.
In dry land, you say?
No. It was underwater, but
Oh,
at the
like a
time,
dry land.
because of the way they were found, appeared that it was dry land that they died on, because there were no boats around there. They were looking for boats. But, in other words, it looks like it confirmed what we read about.
Very interesting. This Tzibur was to Yehoshua,
The
mainly?
Sivui was to Moshe Rabbeinu. It was for all generations.
What generation?
All generations. It was all generations.
Did Yehoshua make any
Changes?
He didn't. There was one exception, which was the Givonim, which is a complicated story, which we have to leave aside. But otherwise, there was no exception to this. Chassidus says that what are the 7 nations? The 7 nations are the 7 bad character traits. Every Jew has to get rid of the 7 evil nations. The first one is Knani, is Chesed of Klipa, and the second is Chita, is Gvura, which is Knani is lustful pleasures, and what is Chiti? Chiti is anger, deceit, burning. That's Chiti. All 7 bad character traits are the 7 nations, and every Jew has to conquer his own little land and make it a holy land. Get rid of the 7 evil nations. Get rid of the 7 bad midos.
With Amalek, it was much worse because it said in Machotim Ched Zecher Amalek.
Right. Well,
With
it is
them,
not
it
part
said,
of it.
Do not
Right.
make covenant.
Right. It's
It's much
separate.
easier.
Right. We're not talking about Amalek. Right. Amalek is separate.
So,
So they're brought in Chassidish Sforim that why is it that Gergoshi left on his own? Because Gergoshi is the 7th. Is Malchus of Klippa. Malchus has nothing of its own. Malchus is only a receiver. If you take away the giver, Malchus has nothing left. Right? If there is no water in the tank, if you have hot water here in the sink, but there's no hot water in the basement, in the tank, you're not going to get any hot water out of the sink, right? If the 6 midas has nothing to give, there's nothing sitting here. And Malchus is receiving. But if
it's in a midah ra?
so what is it? So what happens is like this. So the Rebbe explains. The 6 midas, those are 6 bad character traits. Malchus is executing the 6 bad. It's machshava dibra ma'aseh. It's thought, speech, and action. When a person gets rid of all the 6 bad evil character traits, automatically their thoughts and speech and action will be pure. It will be inconceivable that a person would all of a sudden get some ugly type of thoughts, unholy thoughts, or entertain speaking inappropriate speech or action when the whole character is pure. Once you get rid of the 6 bad nations, once you get rid of the 6 bad character traits, Girgoshi, on Amad upon him Elef, he goes out on his own. He's finished. Dr. Rebbe, that now we could say there's 2 separate Rashis. One Rashi, it sounds like they were out from the beginning. From the first Rashi, it sounds like that Omad Aponim Me'elov. The second Rashi is Bavium is Yeshkan. It sounds like now it's only now, not originally. There's two ways to handle a person's machshiva dibur ma'aser. Tzaddik, the truth is, the best way and the tzaddik way of doing it. First, he purifies thought, speech, and action. First, he purifies his character, and automatically thoughts are clean, speech is clean, the actions are pure. That's beautiful. But that's a person whose neshama can handle the avodas Hashem of a tzaddik. But the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that many of us are born not to be tzaddikim. That's not our mission in life. We have constant struggle, and that's a lifelong struggle, and we're not made to be tzaddikim. So that's the second. It talks about that you can't make a covenant with them. You have to be very careful from them.
So what the pasuk va'amech kulam tzadikim?
Right? It's a different level of tzaddik, not the tzaddik of Tanya. Different type of tzaddik. Talking about they're all going to Olam Haba. They all they're in a way they're bigger tzaddik. They have a bigger struggle. It's a harder job, but it's a different job. They can't say, you know what, we're going to try to purify the character, and then thought, speech, and action will follow. Some of us,
write a book.
yeah, right, which that was pushed aside. That was it. Because right, but Beinanim, that's the Tanya, which teaches us how to tackle our thought, speech, and action even before we purify the 6 character traits. So there is one way, which is in the earlier pasuk, which they get chased out. Girgoshi, he follows right after them. They leave, he leaves. But then there is another way, which is that we have to handle Girgoshi on his own. We have to really get rid of the Girgoshi. A Beinani has to get rid of the Girgoshi. Can't wait to say I'm going to purify my character, and automatically my thoughts will be clean, and my speech will be pure, and my actions will be pure. A Beinani has to work on both ends at the same time to try to purify the character, but at the same time, we can't wait till our character is fully pure, because it's a lifelong struggle. We also have to work on our thoughts, making gates, and not allowing certain thoughts that we know are not for us. And when they come into we have to have a strategy of how we chase those thoughts away. Same, right? We have to have a strategy. And Tanya gives us a strategy of how to do it. In Machshava, in the Dibur, and the Ma'aser.
How's the Megumis in the Rashi?
Because in the second story in the Torah, in the first it's Omad Upona Mipnei Me'elov. Mashma, that first the six got chased out. The Me'elov, he went. The second one is Pona Mipneim. Kilu, it wasn't the say that at first the 6 ones got chased out and then it was Mipneim from the Yid. The truth is that Chassidus says that the Eibishter promised that the Jews will have the land of 10 nations, not only 7 nations. And they only got the land of 7 nations. The truth is, as we spoke about this many times, if you look at the land of the 7 nations, that's already huge. But for some reason, Sicha and V'oig is counted as part of, according to many opinions, of the 7 nations, right? So if you look at the land of the 7 nations, that would be today Israel, that would be maybe half of Lebanon, Syria, half of Jordan, or most of Jordan, a piece of Iraq. That's the land of the 7 nations. What is the land of the 10 nations? We don't know exactly the borders, but it'll be a huge country, geographically huge country. When Mashiach will come, there won't be a fight. The 7 nations will get up, and they will vacate. It'll be their honor to give it to the Jewish people. Could you imagine? Jordan will vacate. Syria, they will vacate. There's nothing left there anyway.
Nothing left.
It's not bad.
It's already vacant.
Huh?
It's starting to vacate.
Send them to New York City.
Germany now.
They expect
New
that.
York City.
But will they accept them?
The Americans,
Go to
hopefully,
Europe, Europe
let's
expects.
send them to Europe.
Germany, Berlin.
Right on the Milchama of Gog and Magog.
I don't know. But I know that the Alter Rebbe had a discussion with his brother. And the brother said that it says in the Pasuk, Vasiroisi Levo Evan. I will take away the sometimes the heart instead of being soft. It's hard. So we say that we get the Abisha says Maltamas Orlas Lavavchem. You have to get rid of the Orlas Alev. But the Alter Rebbe said to his brother, that's only when it comes to the heart. To the heart, that we have to do. That's our avodas Hashem today in the days of Golos. You have to chase away the 7 evil nations, the bad character traits, and make our heart a holy land. But to rewire our brain, that's very difficult. That we leave for the Eibishter. For the Eibishter says we have to purify our heart. We have to chase away the 7 evil character traits, the midos. But Keser, Chochma, Bina, or Chochma, Bina, Das, that's Keni, Knizi, V'Kadmaini, these 3 nations, that the Eibishter himself has to do. That's going to be done when Mashiach will come. So our job is to chase out the 6th nation, or in general the 7 nations. And then we're Zoicha that the Eibishter chases out also the other 3 nations. The Eibishter should help in our avodas Hashem. We should chase away the 7 nations, and then the Eibishter should chase away the other 3 nations. Not only in avodas Hashem, Begashmias, Poshet, we should see that all the adversaries of the Yidden, Me'aleim, like Agoshi, they get up on their own, and they should go. Where should they go? Maybe like Agoshi, to Africa. Or maybe like these guys say, to Europe. We don't care where they go. They should vacate the land of the 7 nations and the 3 nations, and we should all move there, Bevis Mashiach Tzedkenu.
But who will serve the Jews? They said